Okay, our message this morning. The subject of the life of Jesus has been greatly debated in modern times. There are a lot of reasons for that. For one thing, information is being shared because of the internet, because of telephones, information that couldn't be shared worldwide 50 years ago can be shared now. And one of the archaeological digs, discoveries of ancient Christian documents, all kinds of things have happened. And the other big thing that happened was in the early 1960s, the Catholic Church actually opened the Vatican Library to people who weren't priests. They opened it up to other students and people who were interested in studying early Christian documents. And so that, of course, has brought us a whole bunch of new information and a whole bunch of discussion with it. Now, the experts who study ancient religious documents are called textists. And they have determined that the Bible has been changed more than any other book in recorded history, more than any of them. And so, many of these experts say, throw the whole thing out because you can't depend on any of it as being true. Now, a lot of people have done that. They have basically thrown Christianity and Jesus out the door. Now, for me personally, now of course I look at Jesus as being an enlightened master, one of many, along with the Buddha, along with Muhammad. Okay? For me, throwing Jesus out altogether is like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Okay, the bathwater is no longer clean and it is no longer pure. The truth of it has been muddied by humanity. And there's a lot about Christianity that I don't agree with. But the truth is, I find the core teachings of Jesus to be beautiful. Now, I happen to find this next thing. What it is it is a general consensus of what people can reasonably assume. Not know for sure, because we can't know anything for sure, but we can reasonably assume to be true about Jesus, the man, the historical Jesus. Jesus, or Yeshua, which is the correct pronunciation of his name in Arabic, the son of Joseph, and probably of the tribe of Judea, was born presumably in Nazareth of Galilee prior to 4 BCE. His mother's name was Mary or Miriam. He was a carpenter by trade, as was his father. Evidently a person of high intelligence and deep spirituality, he was attracted by the preachings of John the Baptist and was baptized by him in the Jordan River. After John's arrest, Jesus broke with the Baptist movement and began a preaching mission of his own. After John's execution, he became widely known in Galilee and Judea for his independent teachings and his healing abilities. Because of his cavalier attitude about the rabbinical interpretation of the Torah, what they mean by that is, at that time, the Torah was being interpreted in terms of rules and regulations. If you wanted to be a good Jew, you had to follow every rule and regulation. Okay? Jesus didn't look at it that way. He looked at the spirit of the Torah. Loving God, caring for one another, all of these things. And the rules and regulations weren't so important. So, of course, he did not make friends with the heads of the Jewish temple. He was especially cavalier about his attitude about the regulations about the Sabbath. You know, you do no work on the Sabbath. Well, he's having dinner with sinners, he's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing all kinds of things. You know, that just was not approved of. So the Jewish authorities arranged for his arrest in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, probably 33 CE. And he was turned over to the Roman procurator on a trumped-up charge of insurrection, and he was sentenced to death by crucifixion and executed at Jerusalem. Now, what can we presumably assume to be true about the teachings of Jesus? He taught that God loved all men and women indiscriminately, the good as well as the evil. And if we loved each other with the indiscriminate love of God, that love would direct us to act in accordance with the will of God. The core of his message was for us to comfort and sustain one another, to lift the burdens of the oppressed, and to love and serve God with joy. Now, Christians today believe that, yes, Jesus was a human being who lived on earth, and that, yes, he is still alive today, and that he communicates with people today. Okay? Now, there are others who believe that Jesus is just a myth. Now, yes, there is evidence, like solid evidence, that a Jewish zealot was crucified at Jerusalem right in the same time period that supposedly Jesus was. Now, is there any way to definitively prove that that man was Jesus? No, there is not. Is it possible that Jesus was just a mythical figure made up in people's minds, that they endowed with their noblest aspirations? Of course it is. We can't prove it either way. There is no solid evidence either direction. Either way is a possibility. We don't have any pictures of Jesus from his time, no statues. He never wrote anything down. You know, the Taoists have it good because somebody strong-armed Lao Tzu's into writing down the I Ching. He didn't want to because he knew people would screw up the writings. He's like, I'm not writing anything down. People won't understand it. They'll screw it up. Guess what happened to Christianity? Same thing. But they didn't change the I Ching. See, they were smart. They didn't change that document. They left it exactly as it was. Now, it's been put into other languages. So, of course, there are some minor that, you know, anytime you do that, that's going to happen. But Jesus never did that. He didn't write anything down. And so all of his teachings were oral teachings that were supposedly passed on. And then you have the Nag-Hammadi documents, who are the earliest Christian documents that we have. They were written about 25, maybe 30 years after Jesus died. Those are the closest to the source, and those are a sayings gospel. All they contain are sayings of Jesus. There is no stories about his life. It's only the things that he said. Those are the earliest gospel documents. So the stories about Jesus' birth, his death, his life, and everything else, most of that was written like 100 years after he died. That's a long time. And as far as, for example, his birth, I don't know who it was, some expert found evidence that people never went to Bethlehem to register for the Roman taxes. And it's solid evidence. So the birth story in Bethlehem can get thrown right out the window. That's not true. Okay? Now, about the resurrection story. This is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24. On the first day of the week, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices which they had prepared. And they found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. And as they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day rise." And they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe him. You know, in our day and age, trying to logically consider a human body after 3 days of having died 3 days before, coming back to life, is very difficult, because we know from the study of nature, the minute any living being dies, the body immediately starts deteriorating and falling apart, which is what it is supposed to do. It is supposed to return to the earth. However, if we look at some other possibilities, maybe something did happen. Maybe. You know, in our time, science has told us that energy does not die. Now, obviously, our souls, our spirit, the essence of what we are, is energy. So, does it die like the body? No. Well, if that's true for us, that would have been true for Jesus as well. If the essence of what we are moves on after the physical body passes on, then Jesus' essence would have moved on also. While I worked at the Spiritualist Church in Kent with the mediums, medium buddies who come and help us for the psychic fair every year, I can tell you that some of the messages that come through to them from those who have passed on are absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. You know, my son committed suicide almost 7 years ago now. And the one medium there that I had gone to, because, you know, Bob and I were a wreck. And she told me exactly the number of cases of beer that Kevin had stored underneath his bed. I didn't even know how many were there until I went back home and counted. So that is a possibility. That is a possibility. And as far as having visions of Jesus, or the essence of Jesus, his spirit or whatever, I've had visions. So that's not out of the realm of possibility for me. All we can do, we don't know what happened 2,000 years ago. We really don't. It's just a matter of being open to the possibilities and find what works for us. Keep the things that work in our spiritual life. All right. We are